My fiancé returned from the battlefield, not only having lost the war but also crippled in one leg, his bright future completely ruined. I followed the family's orders to break off the engagement, but suddenly a line of text floated before my eyes. What a foolish supporting character. The male lead is destined to become a prince of a different surname in the future. If you humiliate him by breaking off the engagement now, you'll end up disfigured, thrown into a beggar's den, and starved to death. Such a perfect start, yet you're playing your cards so poorly. I was scared half to death, meeting Chi Chen's gloomy gaze. I didn't mention a word about breaking off the engagement, only asking after his well-being. I am the legitimate daughter of the Shen family. My father is a minor 7th rank official in the court. Apart from attending court on the 1st and 15th of each month, he spends every day studying how to curry favor and climb the social ladder, as his most valuable asset. He went to great lengths to secure an excellent marriage for me, the legitimate son of General.He, a 2nd rank official in the current court, is my fiancé. To put it this way, when my father attends court, he can't even see General.He's heels. Yet, thanks to this marriage arrangement, my father can pat General.He on the shoulder after court and call him in-law. But just yesterday, this excellent marriage arrangement encountered an unexpected turn. The news of General.He's defeat reached the capital, and along with it came the reports of the deaths of General.He and his wife, as well as the news that Chi Chen had lost a leg. Immediately, my father felt as if his world had collapsed. To avoid being implicated by the Chi family, he urged me to break off the engagement with Chi Chen as quickly as possible. A dead cripple still dares to dream of marrying my daughter. Dream on. Don't be sad, Shushu, once this storm passes. I'll definitely find you an excellent match. I fully agreed with my father. I had no intention of marrying a cripple, so early the next morning, I set off with the butler. Out of guilt, I also had him bring along some nourishing medicinal herbs. Upon arriving at the Chi residence, the butler, dressed in white, came to open the door. As we walked in, the vast Chi estate felt empty and desolate. Even though people were still around, it gave off an atmosphere of decline and decay. I was thinking about finishing the matter quickly and heading home early, hoping to make it in time for the midday meal. Suddenly, the next moment, a line of text floated before my eyes. What a foolish supporting female character. If you break off the engagement now, you'll have no chance to cling to the powerful in the future. The male lead is destined to become the only non-royal prince in the future. If you humiliate him today, you'll end up disfigured, thrown into a beggar's den, and starved to death. What a perfect starting hand, and you've completely ruined it. How utterly foolish. I was so frightened that I froze in place, still trying to figure out what these strange words meant. When I looked up and met a pair of gloomy eyes, Chi Chen sat under the eaves, dressed in pure white mourning clothes. His handsome face was so gaunt that his bones were visible, and his tightly pressed lips were pale and bloodless. I stiffened under his gaze, hearing him ask, "What brings you here, Miss Shen?" A chill ran down my spine, as if I were being watched by a predator that could snap my neck at any moment. Chi Chen was seated in a specially made chair, still preoccupied with the strange characters I had just seen. I blurted out, "I came to see you." "Oh, to see me? What for?" "To see if I have. I'm here to deliver medicinal herbs." I interrupted Chi Chen's words and had the butler bring over the herbs I had brought. Pointing at the large and small boxes of herbs on the ground, I forced a smile and said to Chi Chen, "I heard you were injured. I don't know if these will be useful, but please use them for now. I have matters to attend to at home, so I won't stay any longer. I'll come see you another day. You make sure to eat well and take care of your health." After saying that, I turned and left, not daring to stay a moment longer. I felt as if I had run into a ghost. After returning from the Chi residence, I subtly asked the people who had been with me that day, and aside from me, no one else had seen those words. Those strange words only appeared that one time at the Chi residence and didn't show up again in the following days, leaving me utterly perplexed, but it's better to believe it than to dismiss it. The meaning conveyed between the lines was truly alarming. Perhaps, just like in the storybooks, this is a blessing bestowed upon me by fate, without delay. I went to find my father that very night and told him I didn't want to call off the engagement. My father asked me why, and I said I was in love with Chi Chen. In short, "Father, I will marry no one but Chi Chen." Then, I was locked in the ancestral hall. My father stood outside the door, roaring, "How could someone as wise and mighty as me have given birth to such a foolish child? You stay in there and reflect on your actions. Butler, no food for her for 3 days." How could I be foolish enough to go hungry for 3 days? I ran away on the second night, climbing out of the ancestral hall window and scaling the wall of the Shen residence. Once outside, I headed straight for the Chi residence. When the Chi family butler brought me before Chi Chen, I was so dizzy and weak from hunger that I couldn't bear it any longer and collapsed right into Chi Chen's arms. When I woke up again, it was already noon the next day. Chi Chen was sitting by the bedside. Seeing me open my eyes, he asked in a puzzled tone, "The doctor said you fainted from hunger. What happened?" A young maid was standing nearby, holding a plate of pastries. I grabbed them and stuffed them into my mouth. After eating a few pieces, I finally felt like I had come back to life. I wiped my mouth, grabbed Chi Chen's sleeve with reddened eyes, and lowered my head, looking as if I couldn't bring myself to speak. "My father said he wants to call off the engagement." I refused. "So he locked me in the ancestral hall and wouldn't give me any food." Chi Chen was taken aback, his hands resting on his knees, trembling slightly. "You don't want to call off the engagement? Why? Given the current situation, calling it off is the best choice. The general's mansion has already fallen, and your father is doing this for your own good." As I listened, I secretly glanced up at him. Though Chi Chen said these words, the fierce determination in his eyes was almost overflowing. I lowered my head again and continued in a pitiful tone, "No, I don't see it that way. Since we've made this commitment, we should share both honor and disgrace. I will not agree to call off the engagement." Chi Chen remained silent for a long time before casually saying, "Get some rest." Then he left. I immediately had the maid prepare a table of hot meals for me. I stayed at the Chi residence, and during that time, Chi Chen brought me news from home. Uncle Shen has been visiting the Minister of Revenue Song's residence frequently lately, and the two of them have been quite close. I knew exactly what was going on. He plans to arrange a marriage with the Minister of Revenue Song's family. My half-sister has been registered under my mother's name since birth, and she is about the same age as the Minister of Revenue Song's legitimate son. Chi Chen glanced at me but said nothing. I walked over and sat down beside him, grabbing his sleeve as I said, "Chi Chen, my father has already given up on me. You're all I have now." Chi Chen did not move. He sat in silence, his face still cold and indifferent, but I knew that in his current state, as long as he did not refuse me, it was a tacit agreement. In the days that followed, I accompanied Chi Chen in treating his leg. The process was agonizing. Chi Chen became increasingly moody and unpredictable, and all the renowned doctors we found from all over the country were driven away by his scolding. Out of 10 doctors who came, 9 said Chi Chen's leg could not be cured, and the remaining one, not wanting to be scolded, vaguely said it was up to fate. Chi Chen drove away all the doctors and sat alone in the room, head bowed and hair disheveled, looking like a madman. I pushed open the door, entered with the medicine, and placed the bowl in his hand. Meeting his bloodshot eyes, I spoke to him word by word. "There are so many doctors in the world. We'll see them one by one. If these don't work, we'll try the next batch. We're bound to find the right one. Chi Chen, don't give up." I tightly grasped Chi Chen's wrist. He took a deep breath, tilted his head back, and swallowed the medicine. I have more confidence in Qi Chen's leg recovery than he does himself. Qi Chen is destined to become the only non-royal prince in the Great Yong dynasty. A minor leg injury is nothing to worry about, and indeed, on an ordinary afternoon, a white-bearded old man knocked on the gate of the general's mansion, claiming he could cure Qi Chen's leg. Half a month later, Qi Chen was able to stand up. The moment Qi Chen stood up, I was almost moved to tears of joy. No one knows just how happy I was. Qi Chen took a handkerchief and gently wiped away my tears. His movements incredibly tender. I snatched the handkerchief from him, let out a fierce breath, and said, "To hell with this beggar's den. Whoever wants to live here can live here. I certainly won't." After Qi Chen's leg had fully recovered, he told me he was setting off for the border, heading to the battlefield, and asked me to wait for him at the estate. In my heart, "Shushu, you have long been my wife. Once I win the battle and earn military merits, I will marry you in a grand and glorious ceremony." I had no doubt about Qi Chen's words. "All right, go with peace of mind. I'll wait for you at the estate for your triumphant return." Qi Chen smiled and gently patted the top of my head. At that moment, familiar words began to drift before my eyes. TSK. 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 I thought the female supporting character had gotten smarter, but it turns out she's still so foolish. Indeed, a supporting character will always be a supporting character. No matter how hard you try, you can never become the female lead, so just stay quietly in the capital while our male lead goes to the battlefield to meet his true destined one. I closed my shocked mouth and grabbed Qi Chen's arm tightly. "I'm going with you." Qi Chen smiled and patiently explained to me, "The battlefield is perilous, and besides, I am going to atone for my mistakes and earn merit, so the conditions are even harsher. I cannot bear to see you suffer, Shushu. You should just stay in the mansion and wait for me at ease. I'm not afraid of hardship, I just want to be with you." I sniffled and began to cry. Auntie could accompany uncle to the battlefield, so can I? I don't want to stay in the mansion, blind to everything, not knowing your news and spending day after day in worry and anxiety. These words indeed struck a chord with Qi Chen. He sighed, pulled me into his embrace, and nodded in agreement to take me along. Before I could even feel happy, I was dressed in ordinary soldier's armor by Qi Chen and joined the marching army with him. Once we left the capital, the officers and commanders at the front rode horses, while the soldiers at the back advanced on foot. Qi Chen held no official position. After General.He's death, he could only enlist as an ordinary soldier. Fortunately, many of General.He's former subordinates were willing to follow him, waiting only for a victory to pave his way to rapid advancement. But that didn't change the fact that he and I had to walk to the frontier city of Muqing. Once we left the capital, Qi Chen offered to carry me on his back. I thought about the long journey ahead and declined his suggestion. Later, when I was too exhausted to walk any further, he firmly scooped me up onto his back. Later on, he somehow managed to get a horse and took me riding with him. We swayed and jolted along the way, finally arriving at Mu City one evening. Ordinary soldiers had to rise early for training, and I followed along for over 10 days until the barbarians launched an attack. Qi Chen led the old troops of General.He to achieve the first merit, was promoted, and got his own tent, while I was naturally brought to his side as a deputy general. From then on, I no longer had to attend morning drills. I could sleep in every day until I woke up naturally, and there would always be a hot meal waiting for me when I did. After eating my fill, I would wander around the city, occasionally substituting for Teacher Liu at the school or helping Aunt Shu with her grocery accounts. My days were quite fulfilling. As battle after battle unfolded, Qi Chen's rank rose higher and higher. Eventually, I no longer had to disguise myself in men's clothing and could show my true face to others. I had thought that by following him to the battlefield, I would experience some thrilling moments like sharing life and death with Qi Chen, taking a sword or a blade for him, and earning his gratitude as a savior. But none of that happened. The army held the barbarians at bay so tightly that even in Muchen, the city closest to the battlefield, the lives of the common people remained peaceful and stable. Over time, I actually managed to become a teacher at the school. That teacher Liu was too old, having taught students all his life, and could no longer get out of bed. In Muching, there were very few people who understood learning. And teacher Liu was the only teacher. My father, for all his faults, had hired various tutors for me since I was young. I was practically proficient in music, chess, calligraphy, and painting, more than qualified to take on the role of a teacher. That evening after dinner, Chi Chen held me in his arms as we gazed at the stars in the courtyard. The sky at the border was truly beautiful. Tomorrow there's a martial arts competition at the military camp. Would you like to come watch? Shoo. I leaned drowsily against his chest, replying in a daze, "No, I have to teach the children tomorrow." Chi Chen nodded, picked me up in his arms, and escorted me back to my room. I rolled over wrapped in the blanket, watching Chi Chen close the door and leave. Just as I was about to close my eyes, words began to float before me. "You silly girl. You can teach the child another day. You have to go watch Chi Chen's martial arts competition. Tomorrow's martial arts demonstration is the first meeting between the male and female leads. As the last two standing, they have a fierce fight, sparks fly, and they instantly hit it off. Wah. So childhood sweethearts can't compete with a destined encounter. No matter how deep the affection, it can't compare to fate. I'm so heartbroken. Men really are all big pig's feet." I snapped awake instantly. Is it a martial arts demonstration? I'm definitely going. The next day, the sky was clear and cloudless. I arrived at the military camp, and Chi Chen's adjutant eagerly led me toward the training ground. Before I could even get close, I heard the deafening cheers and shouts. As I walked over, the people I encountered all made way for me. "Master Shen is here. Perfect timing. Young General.He is sparring right now. Hurry to the front and watch. It's absolutely thrilling." "Master Shen, come quickly. There's a spot here." I went over and stood still, looking up at the stage. The two figures on it were locked in an intense and evenly matched fight. One of them was Chi Chen, and the other was also a young soldier, with delicate and refined features, dressed in a fitted outfit. His vigorous kicks and punches radiated a vibrant vitality. If not for the strange characters reminding me, I wouldn't have been able to tell at this moment that she was also a woman. Chi Chen and she were locked in an intense battle, each countering the other's moves the moment they were suppressed. This sparring match was nothing short of spectacular. I didn't miss the bright gleam in Chi Chen's eyes as he looked at his opponent, a spark I had never seen before. My chest felt tight, and I left without seeing the end. After coming out, I walked aimlessly, not knowing where to go. I sat down by the river, staring blankly at the distant water. My mind was a mess. And I didn't know why it was so chaotic, it just was. Suddenly, with a splash, someone jumped into the river. My seat was blocked by a tree, so the person didn't notice me. I froze for a moment, feeling a bit at a loss, when I saw the person unbutton their clothes, revealing fair shoulders and a gently rising chest. I immediately realized who this person was. While relieved, I hesitated over whether I should speak up. Just as I was about to quietly leave, someone came from behind, a few soldiers. Laughing and joking with their arms around each other's shoulders, were walking toward the river. The person in the water panicked. If these soldiers came over, she wouldn't have time to leave, would be seen completely exposed, and the secret she had been hiding all along would be revealed to the public. I watched as her face gradually lost its color, then stood up and walked out. "Master Shen, you're here. General.He was just looking for you." I stood blocking the intersection. Smiling as I said, I was feeling a bit stifled, so I came here to get some fresh air. Seeing that I had no intention of moving, the group exchanged glances, gave each other a look, and said, "Then we won't disturb Teacher Shen any further." the group turned and left. The person in the river had also finished dressing and walked ashore. She awkwardly touched her head and introduced herself first. "Just now, thank you, Miss Shen. I'm Xie Sheng from the cavalry camp," I nodded. Xie Sheng had hastily put on clothes that were almost completely soaked, and this was definitely not a good time for conversation. We exchanged a few pleasantries before parting ways. On the way back, my mood had lightened considerably. What I think is, even if Qi Chen really falls for someone else, it wouldn't be a big deal for me. In the beginning, I refused to break off the engagement because of those strange words, but it was only out of fear that one day in the future, I might be disfigured, thrown into a beggar's den, and starved to death. Given my current relationship with Qi Chen, even if I really break off the engagement with him, I can still walk away unscathed. On the way, I ran into Qi Chen, who had come looking for me. Seeing me, he breathed a sigh of relief, walked over, and took my hand. "Song," he said, "you came to the training ground. Didn't you say you weren't coming last night?" I shook his hand. Of course. I wanted to witness General.He's heroic demeanor during the competition. Qi Chen raised an eyebrow, a smile in his eyes, looking quite pleased. "Then you didn't come for nothing. Your general won first place and got you a fine piece of fur." I nodded. "Thank you, General. Just saying thank you isn't enough." On the way back, Qi Chen mentioned that he would be free tomorrow evening and asked me to accompany him to the Lantern Festival in the city. Before I could respond, he declared it as a thank you gift and said I couldn't refuse. I didn't tell him either that the school would be closed tomorrow, so I would not only be free in the evening but also during the day. Well, a thank you gift is a thank you gift. A few days after that encounter with Xie Sheng, she came to see me with some gifts, saying she wanted to properly thank me. Before leaving, Xie Sheng somewhat awkwardly asked me to keep her secret. I nodded in agreement. I had experienced life in the military camp when I first arrived. It was tough, exhausting, and far from easy. Xie Sheng not only survived there but also earned numerous military merits. Honestly, I deeply admire her. Perhaps because of this shared secret, Xie Sheng and I began to interact more frequently. She would send me some rare trinkets from who knows where, and I would often bring her nourishing soups to help build up her health. Xie Sheng's martial skills were among the best in the camp. But she was far too thin. To say that I saw her jump into the river for a cold bath that day, such behavior can harm the body over time. After a few interactions, she and I actually became good friends, which I hadn't expected. That day, after delivering soup to Xie Sheng, I ran into Qi Chen at the courtyard gate on my way back. He didn't speak at first, pursing his lips as he looked at me. I was a bit puzzled and took the initiative to ask, "Why are you standing at the door instead of going in?" Qi Chen suddenly reached out and pulled me into an embrace, burying his head in my shoulder, his voice muffled as he spoke. "In half a month, the army will launch an attack on the barbarian stronghold. Once I win the battle and claim the top merit, we can return to the capital. By then, we can get married." I nodded, neither confirming nor denying. "Your safety comes first in everything." Qi Chen seemed to have something else to say, but all the way into the courtyard, he gently let go of me, turned, and went straight into the kitchen without saying a word. I blinked, glanced toward the kitchen, and then went to dig up the fruit wine buried under the tree. This wine was something I learned from Aunt Chen next door. Aunt Chen's brewed wine is unmatched in Muchen, and since I learned from her, I think the wine I brewed shouldn't taste too bad. There were 2 jars in total, one for Qi Chen and me to drink, and the other to send to Xie Sheng. Perfect. News of the great battle spread, and the people of Muchen began gathering vegetables from their fields and pigs from their farms to send to the military camp. Some had sons in the camp, others had husbands, leaving only the elderly, weak, women, and children at home. Before every major battle, the camp would become lively. Along the way, I witnessed many scenes of loved ones bidding farewell, but when I reached Xie Sheng, it was quiet. She was polishing her long spear, looking no different from usual. I stood outside and called out to her. She looked up, saw it was me, and showed a puzzled expression. Shoo, what brings you here? I lifted the clothes I was holding in the crook of my arm. The journey ahead will take half a month. And the weather is getting colder, you'll need to wear thicker clothes. Xie Sheng was taken aback for a moment, then took the cotton coat from my hands with both hands. I walked in on my own, then pulled out a small cloth pouch and took out a silk ribbon from inside. The cloth strip you use for binding is stiff and stuffy. I went to find Aunt Chen to exchange for this. From now on, use this, it'll be more comfortable. Xie Sheng stood there somewhat at a loss. After I put the things away, I didn't linger any longer. As I left, I said to her, on the battlefield, swords and arrows are blind. Military achievements are important, but above all, you must take care of yourself. I'll wait for you to come back so we can share a drink together. Xie Sheng nodded heavily, her eyes red. It wasn't until many years later that Xie Sheng briefly revealed her background to me. She came from an ordinary farming family. Her mother gave birth to 3 daughters before finally having a son. To support the son, she and her 2 older sisters were sold to different places. Xie Sheng was sold into a brothel. That year, she had just come of age. She fled desperately, cut her hair short, smeared her face with dirt, and plunged into the military camp. Life in the military camp seemed harsh and exhausting to me. But Xie Sheng said the camp was good, it was the only place where she could survive. She had no way back. Fortunately, she endured it, fighting tooth and nail to carve out a path for herself. The day to return to the capital came in spring. The war had ended in winter, but because it was too cold for marching, they spent the winter in marching. Qi Chen was somewhat injured, so I made him lie in bed to recuperate, keeping an eye on him every day to ensure he took his medicine. It is worth mentioning that Qi Chen and Xie Sheng shared life and death on the battlefield. Xie Sheng took an arrow for Qi Chen, a hidden arrow aimed straight at Qi Chen's heart. If Xie Sheng hadn't blocked it, Qi Chen might not have survived. As Qi Chen spoke, he held me tightly. I could feel his fear, and I reached out to hold him close as well. Shoo, at that moment, I felt like I almost lost the chance to see you again. I asked Xie Sheng why he took the arrow for me after capturing the barbarian Khan. He said he was afraid that if I died, you would be heartbroken and sad. He took that arrow for me because of you. Regardless of the reason, I, Qi Chen, owe him my life. I must live well, so as not to let him down. What on earth is all this about? And what's with that look of guarding against thieves? I pushed his head away. I'm going to bring medicine to Xie Sheng. You should lie down and rest properly to recover from your injuries. As the weather grew warmer, the plan to return to the capital was put on the agenda. Qi Chen had won a great victory this time, capturing the Khan of the barbarians alive and expanding the territory of Daong, an achievement even his father had never accomplished. When the army entered the capital, the crown prince led the officials to welcome them at the city gate, with the common people lining the streets to cheer. After Qi Chen entered the palace, I returned to the Qi residence. I had barely sat down when the steward hurried in to report that my father had arrived. When I saw my father, his face was glowing with joy, and he couldn't stop smiling. As soon as I stepped through the door, he rushed over, took my hand, and said excitedly, "You truly are my daughter. You predicted that Qi Chen wouldn't fall, and now you're the great hero of our family." I yanked my hand back forcefully. "Dad, you need to hurry up and prepare my dowry. I'm in a rush to get married, and the dowry can't be too little. If it's too little, people will say our family is trying to climb the social ladder." Nonsense. Climb what ladder? My daughter never abandoned Qi Chen even when he was disabled. Where else could you find such a good woman? It's Qi Chen's good fortune to be able to marry you. I held back my emotions, barely managing to keep a smile on my face. Anyway, now that Qi Chen has been promoted, our family can't appear too shabby and become a laughingstock. Dad, You figure it out yourself. Watching my father's retreating figure, I thought about many things. For example, according to the words I can see, I would be resented by Chi Chen for breaking off the engagement, leading to my disfigurement and being thrown into a beggar's den to starve to death. If things really happened that way, what were my family members doing at that time? Even if Chi Chen holds a grudge, he wouldn't have nothing better to do than to forbid my father from bringing me a steamed bun or a dumpling in the beggar's den, would he? How could I possibly starve to death? Another example, I followed Chi Chen to the border. And for over a year, there was no news from me. Now that I've finally returned, my father's first words were all about that, without even asking if I was doing well, if I was injured, or if I had suffered, not a single word. Although I had long known my father was calculating, it was only at this moment that I truly felt his cold indifference. It wasn't until Chi Chen returned from the palace that I became happy again. Chi Chen was also overjoyed. He reached out, lifted me up, and spun me around in the courtyard. With a smile, he said, "Shushu, I've inherited my father's title, and I've also brought up our matter to His Majesty. In a few days, the imperial decree for our marriage will arrive. I can finally marry you. We're going to get married." I was dizzy from being spun around and leaned into Chi Chen's embrace. At this moment of joy, I knew how hard one it was for Chi Chen. Fortunately, perseverance has finally paid off. Chi Chen said that the imperial decree for the marriage would be issued in a few days. But more than 10 days passed without any movement from the palace. Chi Chen had already started taking his brothers to purchase the items needed for the wedding, leaving the house in high spirits every day. I stayed in the room embroidering my wedding dress, with my already married half-sister making time to help me. During our casual chat, I asked her how she was doing in her husband's family. She smiled proudly and said, "Don't worry, sister, I'm doing very well." I felt reassured. Originally, my father had favored the eldest son of Minister Song, but my sister had taken a liking to the family's second son. I had already run away by then, and with only my sister to rely on, father had no choice but to follow her lead. Looking back now, it seems she made the right choice. My sister has been exceptionally clever since she was a child. In her own words, she could outsmart those people to death. Embroidering a wedding dress is a time-consuming and labor-intensive task. I spent nearly half a month on it. While Chi Chen almost completely transformed the mansion, the most noticeable change was the red silk draped both inside and outside the rooms, filling every corner with a festive atmosphere. But strangely, the imperial decree for the marriage never arrived. That day, Xie Sheng invited me to go to a temple outside the city to offer incense. The bodhisattva enshrined in this temple was widely known for being particularly efficacious. When Xie Sheng returned to the capital, she was rewarded for her merits and given an official position. Now serving as a minor general, she currently serves under Chi Chen, and regardless of anything else, the two of them are a well-coordinated team when it comes to official duties. Chi Chen once mentioned to me after dinner one day that while in Mu City, he had considered transferring Xie Sheng to serve as his deputy general. I wasn't aware of this, but I did know that Xie Sheng had always been in the cavalry camp in Mu City and never served as Chi Chen's deputy. I thought this and asked accordingly. Chi Chen then said, "When I sparred with him back then, I admired his skills and thought that having such a fierce general under my command would surely shorten our return to the capital. But later, seeing that kid always trying to win your favor, I was too busy guarding against him to even think of bringing him under my nose and having him be an eyesore." At that moment, I was stunned. So, the reason Chi Chen looked at Xie Sheng with such a bright expression during the martial arts competition was because of this. When I offered incense to the bodhisattva, I wanted to ask for many things, but in the end, I only made one wish, for Xie Sheng, Chi Chen, and me, the three of us, to be safe and well. I just hope the Bodhisattva doesn't think I'm greedy for asking for the safety of 3 people at once and refuse to grant my wish. On our way down the mountain, we encountered a dangerous situation. A group of mountain bandits was chasing a carriage, pushing it right to the edge of a cliff. Xie Sheng immediately drew his sword and charged toward the bandits. I then led the remaining maids and guards to pull the carriage that was about to fall. The carriage curtain was blown open by the wind, revealing a young lady inside dressed in luxurious attire. She looked terrified, her hands tightly gripping the window frame, her face pale, and her swollen eyes filled with despair at the thought of death. Feeling a pang of sympathy, I comforted her. "Don't be afraid, I'll pull you up." She nodded emphatically at me, tears streaming down her face without pause. Fortunately, I had brought many people with me, and slowly, the carriage that was about to fall was pulled back up. At that moment, words swiftly floated before my eyes. If the supporting female character knew she was saving Princess Zhaohua, the very person competing with her for her husband, she would surely regret it. Right? Why has the imperial marriage decree been delayed for so long? It's all because the emperor values Qi Chen and wants to marry the princess to him. Whoa. It was finally time for Shen Shu and Qi Chen to return to the capital and get married. But who would have thought a princess would suddenly appear? My favorite couple is about to break up. I'm so heartbroken. RRRR. I was stunned for a moment but didn't let go of my grip on the carriage. I didn't know before, but now I do. But so what? This is a living, breathing human life, in Morcheng. Life is above all else. After Xie Sheng had dealt with the bandits, I also managed to pull the carriage completely back onto the ground. Xie Sheng and I helped the young lady out of the carriage, and she thanked us through intermittent sobs. Not long after, a team of guards on horseback galloped up the mountain path, and the leading officer knelt before the young lady. "Your humble servant is late to the rescue. Please forgive me, Princess." Princess Zhaohua was soon surrounded and escorted away. On the way into the city, Xie Sheng held my hand and spoke to me at length. One sentence in particular stunned me. She said she wanted to marry me. I covered my mouth, looking at her and then at myself, the implication clear without words. Sheng, we're both women. How can you start talking nonsense? Xie Sheng blushed and waved her hands. It's not what you think. I mean, if you ever need help, I can be there for you. The one just now was Princess Zhaohua, at the last palace banquet. His Majesty intended to betroth the princess to Qi Chen. Although he refused, it's clear His Majesty hasn't given up. We can't question the affairs of the royal family. But one thing is certain, if Qi Chen ever lets you down, I'll take you away. I now hold an official position and have my own residence. It may not be as comfortable as the Qi estate, but I'll do everything I can to give you a good life. I looked at her, my emotions tangled and complex. Feeling as though something was swelling in my chest, filling it to the brim. Before I could speak, words began to fly rapidly before my eyes. Though they were just words, I could sense their intense excitement. Arth, it's not impossible either. Those two, I've been wanting to say this for a long time, they are super sweet together. The content that followed gradually became somewhat explicit, and some words were replaced with symbols, making it quite difficult to understand. I selectively ignored these words and first thanked Xie Sheng for her kindness. I think, if it really comes to that, this could also serve as a fallback option. I have always been someone who knows how to plan for myself. But what happened next was somewhat unexpected. The day after returning, Princess Zhaohua arrived at the Qi residence with a grand procession of palace maids and eunuchs. Making a grand entrance, she sent me many luxurious fabrics and jewelry, and at the same time brought the imperial decree for the marriage. After returning, I learned your identity from the palace servants and went to ask my father for this marriage decree. The princess affectionately took my hand, handed the decree to Qi Chen, and looked down at him with her chin raised, saying, "Miss Shen is my life-saving benefactor. if you dare treat her poorly, I will have my father demote you to a harsh, cold place and never allow you to return." I listened with a mix of amusement and helplessness. Who could have imagined things would develop in this way? The princess left happily, saying she would attend my wedding banquet and see me off as a bride. I nodded in agreement. After many twists and turns, my marriage with Chi Chen was finally set for the following March. However, in mid-February of the following year, urgent news arrived from the border. The newly enthroned Khan of the barbarians had allied with the northern Ziman, amassing an army of 100,000 troops, and was now advancing toward Morching. The barbarians sent an envoy to the capital, demanding that Daeong return the cities they had seized, and also requested a princess for a marriage alliance, threatening to march their army to the border otherwise. The two sides had just fought a major battle not long ago, and both had suffered heavy losses. Logically, they should have been recuperating. But the barbarians had unexpectedly formed an alliance with Shiman. Chi Chen started leaving early and returning late, and a few days later, he brought back news that the majority of the court officials advocated for the marriage alliance and returning the captured cities. Chi Chen was furious. I had seen firsthand how difficult it was to win the previous war. To put it without exaggeration, that victory was built upon the flesh and blood of countless soldiers. But now, not only must it be returned, but a princess must also be sent, and currently, the royal family has only Princess Zhaohua of marriageable age. A few days later, a palace eunuch came to deliver a message, saying that Zhaohua had invited me for an outing. Since rescuing Zhaohua from the bandits that time, I gradually became good friends with her, because we were both women. Zhaohua often invited me to gatherings. However, this time, the atmosphere was not as relaxed as before. She took me to a hillside on the outskirts, halfway up the mountain. The scenery here was excellent, a hidden gem we had discovered by chance. Sitting on the grass covered with a blanket, Zhaohua raised her glass to me with a smile, then tilted her head back and drank it all in one go. She looked at the capital city not far away at the foot of the mountain and tugged at the corner of her mouth. Scenery like this, I might never see it again in the future. News from the court couldn't be hidden from her. With her face flushed red from the wine, she leaned over and hugged me. As a princess, I accepted my duty long ago. I knew this day would come sooner or later. Using me alone in exchange for a century of peace for Daeong, sparing the people from the suffering of war, it's well worth it. She buried her head in my arms and said in a muffled voice, "It's a pity I won't be able to see you off on your wedding day. I promised, but now I have to break my word." I squeezed my eyes shut, afraid the tears would spill out. That evening, back at the estate, I pulled Chi Chen aside and asked him, "If it comes to war, what are our chances of winning?" Chi Chen didn't find it strange that I asked this way. He held me and sat down, replying seriously, 60%. If I were the main commander, with Xia Sheng as the deputy, it could be 80%. Before I could even feel happy, I heard him say, "His Majesty is old and has been frightened by those civil officials. He doesn't agree to send troops. How could this? Does it mean we can only resort to a marriage alliance?" Zhaohua's life was saved by me. Attack. Those barbarians have always been ambitious and treacherous. From the very beginning, they intended to annex us. The so-called peace marriage and returning cities were nothing but their delaying tactics. My dear, don't be foolish. If Princess Zhaohua is sent there, she will only be tortured to death by those savages. I stared at these words that only I could see, the sound of my own rapid heartbeat echoing in my ears. I grabbed Chi Chen's arm, revealing for the first time in front of him the side of myself that I had always kept hidden. I said, "Chi Chen, the crown prince has grown up, the emperor is old and frail, and the crown prince has always supported sending troops." This information was revealed to me by my sister, who is now the wife of a minister. Her husband is a supporter of the crown prince. That night, I didn't sleep at all. waiting for Chi Chen to return to the mansion all night. It wasn't until dawn broke that Chi Chen returned, bringing good news with him. Soon after, the emperor fell seriously ill, and the crown prince took over the governance of the country. A few officials who were unwilling to go to war were dragged out by the crown prince and executed in front of everyone, and from then on, no one dared to voice any dissent. Chi Chen was appointed as the great general of the nation and led the army into battle. On the day of the expedition, General.He and I stood together on the city wall, watching them depart. The battle dragged on for a long time. During that period, when provisions ran low, General.He took up her sword and visited the mansions of many powerful nobles, pressing the blade to their necks to demand money. I followed behind her, leading a group of palace servants carrying large chests to collect the gold, silver, and jewels the ministers brought out. After 2 more winters passed, news of victory arrived from the border. On the day of my grand wedding with Chi Chen, the wedding banquet was exceptionally lively. General.He and Xie Sheng accompanied me as I left to be married. Xie Sheng had already resumed her identity as a woman. She is now the only female general in our dynasty. A year after the wedding, I gave birth to a daughter, and both Xie Sheng and General.He wanted to be her godmothers. The two of them argued until their faces were flushed, and as I tried to mediate, I suggested that both could be the child's godmother. Xie Sheng, relying on her agility, had already snatched the child and was holding him in her arms, playing with him. General.He chased after her. Scolding loudly, I shook my head and saw Chi Chen giving me a meaningful look. We quietly slipped away from the crowd and went elsewhere to enjoy some peace. After hearing the first story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Next, there is another similar story. Let's continue to see. I saved a noble lady from being buried alive while tomb raiding. She then set her sights on my husband, willingly becoming his concubine, but Liu Qingyuan refused. 1111 is of noble birth. How could she be a concubine? As for you, coming from a bandit background, being the legal wife is truly unseemly. Seeing my silence, he handed me a packet of broken silver. Let this settle our past kindness. I'm sorry, let's just pretend we never met. 3 months later, Liu Qingyuan welcomed his new bride with a 10-mile red dowry. On the wedding night, the two of them vanished into thin air, becoming an unsolved mystery. In the wilderness cemetery, I closed the heavy stone coffin, shoveling earth over it 1 scoop at a time. I'm sorry, both of you. Just pretend I never saved you. While tomb robbing, I accidentally drilled the tunnel crooked and stumbled into a fresh grave. In the tomb chamber, which should have been deathly silent, came the sharp, grating sound of scratching. It turned out to be a beautiful woman who had been sealed alive in the coffin as a sacrifice. Not yet fully dead, I rescued her, brought her home, and took meticulous care of her. The beauty was poisoned by corpse toxins and urgently needed a 1,000-year elixir for treatment. I searched through ancient tombs again, not sleeping a wink for 7 days straight. But once she recovered, she immediately climbed into my husband's bed, trembling with anger. I grabbed a broom to drive this ungrateful woman out of my home. She suddenly knelt down before me with a thud. I truly admire Brother Liu. Please, sister, grant me this wish and let me stay as a concubine. Liu Qingyuan, who had been silent all this time, finally spoke up. This matter is not appropriate. Naturally, it is not appropriate. Back then, the Liu family was plotted against, and the entire clan was wiped out. It was I who dug him out from the pile of corpses. I carried him on my back and walked through the snow for 3 days and 3 nights. Only then did we manage to evade the pursuit and escape with our lives. As a result, I injured my body and developed a fear of the cold. On the night of our wedding, after paying respects to heaven, earth, and our elders, he knelt before me in reverence. In this life, you are the only one for me. We will love each other until our hair turns white. and I will never let you down. Over these 5 years, he has shown me endless compassion and care. He never once made me frown, nor did we ever have a single argument. He is handsome, and when he sits in the academy, many young ladies come to flirt with him. No matter how beautiful or ugly, he never spared a glance. I thought today's matter would be the same. But unexpectedly, he continued, 1111 is a noble lady from a prestigious family. How could she stoop to being a concubine? As for you, coming from a bandit background, being the principal wife would truly damage my reputation. The broom in my hand clattered to the ground. My eyes widened in disbelief as I stared at the person before me. What did you say? Back then, after he woke up, he said that the debt of saving his life was too great to repay, so he could only offer himself in marriage. I declined outright, for I was born of a den of thieves. While he was the son of an official, I feared it would tarnish his good name. Liu Qingyuan merely smiled. I have heard of Miss Shen's actions these past few days. You are not after gold and silver treasures, but merely copying lost ancient medical texts from the tomb for someone else. Such actions, with a clear conscience, can they still be called theft? My face flushed. As for money and such, I have taken some before. The candlelight flickered dimly as he drew close to me, an unusual emotion seeming to flicker in his eyes. In a year of great disaster with no harvest, if it weren't for you retrieving the treasures and distributing them among the villagers to help them survive, in these 10 miles and 8 villages, where would there be any signs of life now? Your actions, my lady, are truly chivalrous, robbing the rich to aid the poor. To have a wife like you is my good fortune. His voice was like fire, scorching straight toward my face. I lowered my head and lightly punched him. Stop talking nonsense. Who agreed to be your wife? You have no choice but to agree. The words still ring in my ears, and now, thinking back, it feels utterly ironic. Seeing me silent, he handed over a packet of broken silver. Consider this money as compensation from me and 1111. The debt of saving a life is now settled. Sorry, let's just pretend we never met. With those words, Liu Qingyuan helped the beauty up and walked out without looking back. I had no choice but to agree, watching his resolute figure. A wave of fine, dense disgust suddenly surged in my heart. It was truly disgusting. Covering my mouth, I rushed out the door and leaned against the peach blossom tree in the courtyard to vomit. The two of them were about to step out of the courtyard gate when they heard the sound and froze in surprise. "Ah Yi." Liu Qingyuan turned around and struggled to utter my name. "Are you pregnant?" I wiped my mouth carelessly. "What if I am? What if I'm not? With your heart as cold as iron, Liu Qingyuan. Would you ever change your mind for the sake of a child?" Turning my head, my heart was stirred by a tempestuous wave. I had thought that the cold qi entering my body back then would leave me without hope of offspring for the rest of my life. Never did I expect that. I glanced at the man standing there in a daze. The joy on his face was equally evident. But love is like spilled water. Even if he changes his mind because of this, I could never forgive him. My child does not need such a heartless and unfaithful father. Having made up my mind, I stood up and went back inside to pack my belongings. After taking just 2 steps, a sharp pain shot through the back of my neck. Instantly, the whole person plunged into darkness. When I opened my eyes again, darkness still surrounded me. I felt puzzled. It's not winter, so why is the day breaking so late? As I tried to get up, my head bumped against something hard. I reached out to touch it. The familiar chill instantly made me shiver. I then felt around the surroundings. No, this is a stone coffin. I had no idea when I had been placed inside a coffin. Help, is anyone there? I pounded on the coffin lid with all my strength, producing a heavy, muffled thud. To my delight, there was indeed someone outside. Hearing the sound, they pushed the coffin lid open a crack. In an instant, fresh air mixed with raindrops rushed toward me. I gasped for breath heavily. "Thank you." I raised my hand to wipe the rain from my face. but the touch felt warm. I was stunned. Looking up, Liu Qingyuan was in tears, gazing down at me from above. I'm sorry, a bad premonition surged in my heart, but I forced myself to remain calm and said, "It's fine, just open the coffin lid first. Whatever it is, let's talk about it outside." He turned a deaf ear. All these years. My feelings for you have been genuine, but I carry a deep-seated blood feud. My enemy holds immense power in the capital. Only by climbing higher than him can I ever hope to see the day of my revenge. But this is too difficult, truly too difficult. In the highest ranks, there are no commoners. In the lowest ranks, there are no nobles. As long as I remain a commoner for a single day, I will never have the chance to rise. The only one who can help me is Ning 1111. My heart trembled. He then said, "You may not know, but Ning 1111 is actually a noble lady from the Marquis's household. The sixth prince was critically ill, and the emperor arranged a marriage to bring him good fortune. Unexpectedly, on the very day she arrived, before the wedding ceremony could take place, the prince passed away. The imperial consort, in her anger, secretly forced her to be buried alive as a sacrifice. Upon learning of this, the emperor was greatly enraged, demoted the empress, and posthumously honored her as Princess Anning. But who would have thought that she was actually saved by you?" Under the torchlight, Liu Qingyuan's jade-like face ignited with a trace of madness. "And she, of all people, favored me. As long as I marry her, my status will no longer be that of a commoner, but a royal son-in-law." I was drenched in cold sweat, my outer clothes soaked through. "But what does this have to do with me, whether you want a divorce or to cast me aside? I have no objections. If you're afraid of being seen, I'll leave for distant lands immediately and never appear before you again." He chuckled foolishly, his voice echoing eerily through the dark, cramped tomb, sending chills down the spine. That was indeed what I thought at the time. "I never imagined you would be pregnant at this very moment." He closed his eyes, as if unable to bear it. "Yi, it's not that I don't cherish this child, but the official world is complex. And people's hearts are hard to fathom. If I leave you and him in this world, once those with ulterior motives find out, such a stain will surely plunge me into an abyss of ruin. I cannot gamble, nor can I afford to. Don't blame me for being heartless. Blame this world instead." He reached out to close the coffin lid. "No." My voice trembled. "Whether I am pregnant or not has not been confirmed. Even if I were, you could have forced me to get rid of it. Yet you didn't even give me a chance to verify it, and you wanted to put me to death. Liu Qingyuan, I just want to ask you one thing. Why, exactly?" He seemed to have heard some amusing joke. "Why, the official selection is imminent. 1111 and I must first return to the capital, then get married, pay respects to the clan, arrange matters with the officials, and thank the elders. Each and every matter is of great importance. How can I afford to waste time idly with you here?" I closed my eyes and shook my head. "That's not right. You're just feeling guilty. Guilty for abandoning your wife and child, for betraying deep affection, fearful that one day in the future, when he achieves fame and success, I would be left with the children and decades of blood and tears, pointing out his heartlessness to the world. Killing me serves no other purpose than to ease his own mind." His face turned an ugly mix of green and white for a moment before he finally admitted, "So what if it is? The only blame lies in your truly awkward position. Otherwise, I would have just kept you as a concubine. So why go to such lengths?" He gave me one last deep look. "Shantiani, in your next life, don't be a thief anymore." As the heavy stone slab slowly closed, darkness swallowed me once again. The voices gradually faded away, and the stubborn resolve in my heart slowly dissipated. In its place came a strong sense of fear and unwillingness. Am I really going to die? As the air slowly ran out, I gasped with my mouth wide open like a stranded fish, but it was all in vain. Fingertips clawed at the cold coffin walls, leaving streaks of blood. Before consciousness faded, one final thought flashed through my mind. Wrong, all wrong. Marrying him was a mistake. Sharing life's hardships was a mistake. Saving him back then was an even greater mistake. And that ungrateful noblewoman from the Marquis's household, just thinking of the two of them. I only hate that death comes too slowly, too agonizingly at this moment, unable to instantly transform into a vengeful ghost. Even feasting on their flesh and sleeping on their skin would hardly quell the hatred in my heart. Liu Qingyuan, Ning 1111, if I could start over, I would definitely. Suddenly, someone whispered softly in my ear, Miss Shen, Miss Shen. I abruptly opened my eyes. The man before me was dressed in coarse cloth and short attire, his handsome eyes shining like stars. With a blade of grass held casually between his lips, he grinned at me and said, "Look at you, all bitter and resentful. Did you have another nightmare?" I mumbled a vague response. Only then did I remember I hadn't died. That day, whether it was the heavens having eyes or the cycle of karma, like Ning 1111, I was also saved by tomb raiders before my last breath. Neither, his legs, clad in short boots, swung back and forth, with successive years of disaster. The people have no choice but to rely on the mountains for sustenance and the waters for survival. In our central plains, we have nothing to rely on except for this auspicious land, the Beimang Mountain. Since ancient times, nobles have been buried here in clusters, so there are many treasures, and naturally, many tomb raiders. The same tomb can sometimes attract 4 or 5 groups of people in a single day. You being discovered by me is only to be expected. It has nothing to do with that damned fate. I nodded. Anyway, thank you. What are you thanking me for? He placed his hands behind his head, leaning against the tree in a comfortable position. After working for nearly half a year, 9 out of 10 tombs are empty. If this continues, I'm really going to starve to death. I thought for a moment and said, if you don't mind, after I return from the capital, I can teach you a few tricks of tomb raiding and dragon seeking. Consider it a way to repay you for saving my life. He let out a surprised her, and asked, what are you going to the capital for? I gently wiped the Luoyang spade in my hand. To seek revenge. Shuelang and I sat at the wonton stall, eating one after another, scalding our mouths until we grimaced. Who would have thought that this person, fearing I might not return and fail to fulfill my promise, actually followed me all the way to the capital, and he even called it supervision, not far away. The Qi State Marquis's residence was bustling with activity at its entrance. I frowned. You didn't get the wrong place, did you? How could that be? He took a sip of soup. The Marquis's residence, surnamed Ning, betrothed to the 6th prince. In the entire capital, only this place meets the criteria. But why have we been staking out here for half a month, yet still haven't seen those two show up? As soon as the words left my mouth, I understood, for Liu Qingyuan, once he stepped through this vermilion gate, Ning 1111 would be a noble lady beyond his reach. Even with the debt of a life-saving favor, the old Marquis would never consent to a marriage that would lower his daughter's status. So what he needed to do was to make the situation irreversible first, and it must be a proper, grand wedding. The more people who know, the harder it will be for the Marquis's household to deny it later. They will have no choice but to accept this lowly son-in-law and help him rise to prominence. I sneered inwardly. Oh, Liu Lang, you truly are a master of cunning schemes. Let's go. I stood up and wiped my mouth. Go and find out if there are any families in the city planning to hold a wedding. Let's go to the feast. After inquiring at several silk shops and taverns, I finally learned that in 3 days, a newly relocated family in the eastern part of the city would be holding a wedding. The groom was said to possess the handsome looks of Pan An, while the bride-to-be was described as charming and graceful. The couple was deeply in love and exceptionally devoted to each other, with neighbors all around praising them as a match made in heaven. As for whether the surname is Liu or Ning, it remains unknown. Upon hearing the phrase charming and graceful, Shuelang grinned mischievously and, without a word, pulled me toward the east side of the city. I quickly bought a wide-brimmed hat by the roadside, its brim pulled low, revealing only half of my jaw. All along the east side of the city, there were old houses and faded signboards. There is only one small courtyard house, with the words Shen Residence still fresh in ink. This must be the place, without a doubt, but why the surname Shen? Just as I was wondering, voices came from within the courtyard. Master Shen, shall we use gold ink to write the marriage agreement then? Only after exchanging the marriage agreement will the engagement be considered proper and legitimate. However, I wonder where the esteemed parents of the two of you are currently. A man spoke calmly. To be honest, Shen is a pseudonym, used in memory of the kindness of the deceased. My surname is Liu. Please make sure it's written correctly on the marriage certificate. My parents passed away early, and as for my wife's family, you will find out in due time. Hearing this voice, my blood rushed through my veins. It was indeed him. After seeing off the matchmaker, the two of them walked out from inside the house. It had been many days since they last met, yet Liu Qingyuan still maintained his gentlemanly demeanor, as flawless as jade. His clothes were as white as snow, his face calm and composed, showing no trace of weariness from the journey. Beside him, Ning 1111's eyes were swollen and red, her face pale, and she appeared utterly haggard. She grabbed the man's sleeve, pleading with him desperately. "Ah Yuan, I really don't want to go back to the Marquis's estate. Can't we just be an ordinary couple, living a peaceful life together? Wouldn't that be better? You don't know, the Marquis, my father, he's truly terrifying, and the imperial consort. They devour people without leaving even the bones." Liu Qingyuan held her in his arms and comforted her softly. "All right, I know you have resentment in your heart. Blame your father for letting you marry a sickly man, but how can there be lasting grudges between a father and daughter? Once we are married and return to the estate, I will personally go and reconcile with your father on your behalf." He wore an expression of absolute confidence, as if he already held that splendid glory in his grasp. "Don't worry, when he sees you alive and well, and even bringing back a son-in-law as handsome and talented as me, he'll be overjoyed." Ning 1111's delicate face twisted slightly, and she seemed about to say something more, but the man didn't give her the chance. Lowering his head to kiss her lips, the wind blows the pear blossoms down, covering the ground like spring snow. I quickly covered my eyes and pulled the stunned Shuelang into a nearby narrow alley. We both spoke at the same time. Seeing his anxious look, I scratched my head. "You go first, it's just kind of awkward." Who is that woman?" I was dumbfounded. Who else could it be? Princess Anning, Ning 1111. Unexpectedly, Shuelang blurted out, "Impossible, Ning 1111 doesn't look like this." Now it was my turn to be stunned. "What did you say?" Realizing his slip of the tongue, he quickly lowered his head and stammered, "I mean, she doesn't look like a princess." I couldn't help but laugh and teased him. "She's a noble lady from the Marquis's household, rarely stepping out of her inner chambers. How would a street urchin like you know what she looks like? Could it be that you've never seen such breathtaking beauty and have been moved by worldly desires?" Seeing that he didn't answer, I didn't take it to heart and walked toward the end of the alley. "Let's go. Let's go." I waved at him. "Stop daydreaming. I'll treat you to spicy soup. I'm serious," Shuelang suddenly said with a serious expression. "Haven't you ever doubted it? The Marquis of Qi loves his daughter as if she were his own life. How could he bear to let her walk into the lion's den? To be a sacrificial bride for a sickly ghost?" I turned my head and gave him a disdainful look. "You're being foolish. Who would dare defy an imperial decree? Besides, even a sickly prince is still royalty. Who would look down on that?" A cold smile flickered at the corner of his lips. "You're underestimating the old man. Not only would he dare to defy the decree, he'd even have the heart to rebel. As for old Six, his sudden death is likely also connected to him. Oh, I stopped in my tracks. Your analysis makes sense. So, who exactly is she? The evening glow gradually faded, and our figures slowly vanished into the darkness. And who are you? Xuelang casually pulled a fire starter from his pocket, flicked it, and lit the lantern in his hand. In the firelight, his face gradually became clear. Me, I was betrayed by my closest kin, and by chance, someone came to my aid. I am someone who shares the same misfortune as you. I spoke coldly. Is that so? Clearly, you have deep connections with those high-ranking nobles, yet you pretend to be a petty thief, diligently following me around all day. In the past, I wouldn't have cared. He's just a playful young master, tired of his luxurious life, who came to the Jianghu for an experience. But through this incident, I've come to understand what the wickedness of human hearts truly means. In this world, there are no chance encounters, nor is there kindness without reason. This person must have ulterior motives toward me. Noticing the change in my expression, Xuelang was taken aback at first, then let out a bitter smile. All right, to be honest, I have a benefactor who is currently in dire straits, struggling desperately. Everything I've done is just to lend her a helping hand. Miss Shen, a Yi. He looked into my eyes and said word by word, my identity cannot be revealed at the moment, but please believe me, I will never harm you, so precious. It reminds me of the gaze he cast upon my face when I was rescued that day. Anxiety, tension, urgency, regret, too many emotions flashed by in an instant. Yet, there was not a trace of malice. Feeling somewhat reassured, I softened my tone and asked the crucial question. In that case, how certain are you about Ning 1111's identity? 100%. Xuelang's gaze was sharp and penetrating. Then he fell into thought again. But that face. I feel like I've seen it somewhere in the Qi State's mansion. Suddenly, his eyes lit up. That's right. She was a maid in charge of cleaning, always by Ning 1111's side. Seems to be called Yingjia. I narrowed my eyes. So, it seems the old Marquis cherished his daughter and couldn't bear to let her marry a dying man. But he couldn't defy the Emperor's favor, so he found a beautiful maid to take her place. No wonder she always made excuses whenever Liu Qingyuan mentioned returning to the Marquis's estate. It turns out to be a fake. Presumably, she admires Liu Qingyuan but fears her lowly status would make her undesirable, so she used the name of a noble lady from the Marquis's household, hoping to win the affection of her beloved. Yet it has unwittingly stirred in the other party an ambition to climb the social ladder, now, finding oneself in a difficult situation with no way out. It truly echoes the saying, one reaps what one sows. I sighed. Amidst these thoughts, a candle flame, like a solitary boat, sways towards me in the darkness. Xuelang, holding a lantern, drapes an outer garment over my shoulders. Since we already know the other party's background, there's no need to rush at this moment. It's late. You should go back and rest first. I nodded and walked side by side with him. Tomorrow, let's go to the Marquis of Qi's residence. With our daughter and son-in-law about to get married, how can the father-in-law not know such happy news? On the 23rd day of the 3rd lunar month, just one day before the beginning of summer, Liu Qingyuan, with a dowry of 10 miles of red silk, welcomed his bride, and the flowing banquet stretched from the courtyard all the way to the end of the street. Xuelang and I found a table with fewer people and sat down. After wiping my hands clean, I tore off a chicken leg. I handed it to him as if it were a celebration in my own home. Eat. Then I filled his bowl with wine. Drink it all, not a single drop left. He obediently complied. After finishing an entire jar of Enua Hong, he let out a burp. Good sister, even if you're in a bad mood, you shouldn't punish me like this, right? I have a poor tolerance for alcohol, so I shouldn't let it interfere with important matters later. I gnawed on the chicken bone. How could this be considered a punishment? This is called not letting a free meal go to waste. On the day that Mr. Liu married me, there wasn't even a whole chicken on the table. Yet now, he's using my hard-earned money. I can't go on. A surge of anger is stuck in my chest. Shuelang's chicken leg fell to the ground. He's using all the money you earned from tomb raiding and treasure hunting. I glared at him angrily. Otherwise, he quickly picked it up, blew off the dust, and took a big bite. Don't worry. I'll help you eat it back. After finishing 2 chickens, his gaze turned vacant. If only I hadn't eaten lunch. Just as they were speaking, a sudden burst of firecrackers erupted outside the Shen residence. A procession of musicians and attendants slowly approached, surrounding a bridal sedan chair. Liu Qingyuan, dressed in a bright red wedding robe, stood waiting outside the door with his hands clasped behind his back. Unlike the joy when he married me, at this moment, his expression was more like that of a top scholar who had passed the imperial examination, receiving congratulations from all the officials. In his delight, there was a touch of pride. I pulled up Shuelang, who was slumped on the bench, put on my veil hat, and followed the neighbors into the house. The entrance hall, adorned with floral arrangements and red decorations, was filled with a festive atmosphere. The bridesmaid escorted the bride to stand before the groom. Once everyone was seated, she raised her voice and announced, "First bow to heaven and earth." The newlyweds faced the incense altar and knelt down to kowtow. Second bow to the parents. On the high seat, 2 spirit tablets stood alone. Liu Qingyuan straightened his clothes and composed himself, preparing to perform the grand ceremony once more. Shuelang, who had been silent at the side, finally spoke up. "Wait." The entire hall was stunned. Someone whispered, "I heard the bride is exceptionally beautiful. Could it be someone has come to snatch her away?" Liu Qingyuan's expression changed. "May I ask who you are, and what advice do you have?" "Not at all, not at all." Shuelang stepped forward unhurriedly and took out an exquisite token from his chest. "The owner of this item sent me to congratulate the 2 of you on your wedding." Liu Qingyuan took a closer look, and the anger on his face instantly turned into delight. "Is it the Marquis? Is it my father-in-law? Sure." Shuelang placed a finger to his lips, lowering his voice. "It's good that you know, sir. There are many ears here, so please keep it quiet. You took matters into your own hands and married outside the estate." The Marquis was initially very displeased, but considering you saved the life of the princess and are also a man of fine appearance, he reluctantly accepted you as his son-in-law. The Marquis places great importance on propriety and etiquette. Although he cannot be here in person today, he has invited a distinguished guest to attend. When it comes time to bow to the elders, you shall kneel before her. With that, he was about to welcome me forward. Liu Qingyuan glanced at me, his brow furrowed tightly. What kind of distinguished guest is this? Judging by her attire, she is merely a young woman. Since the current emperor has no princess, which woman could hold a status more noble than Ning 1111? This is clearly a show of power. He said solemnly, "The wedding ceremony is a grand ritual, traditionally reserved for kneeling only to heaven, earth, the sovereign, parents, and teachers. You are still young, esteemed guest, and likely not fit to be the elder for the princess and me." Shuelang was displeased. "How bold you are, sir." The Marquis pleaded for many days before finally securing the presence of Her Highness, the Crown Princess. "Yet you show such disrespect. Looking down upon the sovereign, are you not afraid that this joyous occasion might turn into a funeral?" I was startled by these words. We had agreed to fabricate a prestigious identity to impress people, but this was a bit too extravagant. Liu Qingyuan was even more startled. He hadn't expected his father-in-law to hold him in such high regard. I never expected the visitor to be the future empress. I quickly knelt on the ground, kowtowing repeatedly. "Mother, esteemed guest, please forgive me. I didn't know," Shuelang shouted. "Then why aren't you going?" He scrambled to my feet, looking just like a dog. greetings to our honored guest. For a moment, I was lost in thought. Back in the academy days, Liu Qingyuan, with his arrogance and talent, had drawn the envy and resentment of his classmates. The other party brought in a few local bullies, tied him up in a remote place, and was about to beat him severely. They said that as long as he knelt down and kowtowed, they would let him go unharmed. He refused. By the time I arrived, he was almost covered in blood, yet he still smiled and said, "A gentleman dies for his principles, it is they who have lost." But now, that unyielding pride that even beatings could not break has so easily bent to power, and bent in such an ugly way. Enough, I passed by him and went straight to the seat of honor. With a slight raise of my hand, I signaled for the wedding ceremony to continue. A flicker of joy crossed Liu Qingyuan's face. The distinguished guest did not leave in anger but instead truly took the seat of the honored relative. He must have not taken it to heart. Second bow to the parents. After kowtowing 3 times to me, he seemed to feel it wasn't enough. He insisted on pulling the bride down to bow once more. To show solemnity, I just watched coldly as the two of them knelt and rose and bowed before me, a full 9 times. How truly amusing. After the couple bowed to each other, the wedding hostess announced the completion of the ceremony. Amidst the clamor, everyone returned to their seats to drink. Liu Qingyuan was about to go out to greet them when Xuelang grabbed him and pulled him back. "You have no sense of timing, sir. The ceremony is over. So hurry back to the mansion to pay your respects to your father-in-law." I changed into a groom's outfit. Xuelang had already prepared the carriage at the back door. After waiting for the time it takes an incense stick to burn, the two still hadn't appeared. Just as I was about to go back into the courtyard to check, I saw Ning 1111 with tear-streaked cheeks, desperately clutching Liu Qingyuan's sleeve, one pulling, one dragging. They were locked in a stalemate inside the doorway. "Husband, husband, I beg you, I can't go back, and you can't go back either. Truly, the Marquis will surely kill us." Liu Qingyuan could no longer hold back and pushed her to the ground. "Enough, what kind of nonsense are you spouting all day? My father-in-law has already shown us endless affection. If you keep making such a scene, don't blame me for turning cold and heartless." She was taken aback. "Doting, how could that be? I'm not at all." I was utterly shocked. "Oh no, I'm about to be exposed." Fortunately, Xuelang was quick-witted and rushed forward. Using the opportunity to help her up to secretly tap her mute acupoint from behind, he pushed her back into Liu Qingyuan's arms. "Our princess has always been a bit temperamental. I hope you'll be understanding, sir." Ning 1111 was so anxious that her face flushed red, but she couldn't utter another word. I lifted the carriage curtain and lowered my voice, saying, "Please, if we delay any longer, I'm afraid the Marquis will grow impatient." The two of them entered the carriage one after the other. I let the heavy curtain fall back into place, carefully sealing the gaps. In no time, the commotion inside gradually subsided. The bewitching incense from the western regions truly has an excellent effect. Xuelang and I dared not delay. We spurred our horses on, leaving the city before the curfew. 30 miles to the northeast, there is a mass burial ground with extremely poor feng shui. Inside a pre-dug deep pit lies a coffin. Its tung oil not yet fully dried. Lifting the carriage curtain, Xuelang helped me place the 2 bodies into the coffin. They were dead weight. I bowed 3 times to the coffin. "I enjoyed your wedding feast but didn't give a gift. That's really not right. Consider this a wedding gift. Don't look down on it, it's freshly made." Just as I stood up, there was a commotion inside. Liu Qingyuan woke up. After a moment of thought, he understood what had happened. Forging the Marquis's token. Kidnapping the commandery prince and princess. Who exactly are you? Do you not want your heads anymore? Though he was also stuffed into a coffin, his reaction was much smarter and calmer than mine had been that day. Yet he still guessed wrong. Under the moonlight, I removed my veil. An old friend. The moment he saw clearly, he froze. "Ah Yi, You're not dead. Why aren't you dead? I has long been dead. Now, I fear the human heart, question kindness, and despair of love. Am I not, in a way, a dead person too? So, Lord Marquis, his voice trembled, the Lord Marquis has no idea of my existence, nor does he know that 1111 is still alive. From the envoy and the token to the so-called crown princess and honored guest, it was all a trap you set up to humiliate me. He has always valued his dignity above all else. Recalling how I was made a fool of today, my eyes almost shot out flames. Once I get out, I will definitely kill you. A foot suddenly stepped onto the coffin lid. Shui Lang, with a gloomy face, threw several punches at him. At this point, do you still think you can get out? Liu Qingyuan spat out a mouthful of blood and spoke with difficulty. How dare you two lowly commoners even think of harming me and the princess? Of course we wouldn't dare. I pulled out a Luoyang spade from behind me, polished until it gleamed brightly. Only here, there is no princess. He was taken aback. What do you mean by that? The Marquis loves his daughter as his own life. As everyone in the world knows, if that's the case, why would he have been willing to let her marry a dying man in the first place? And also, I pulled up Ning 1111's hands, where old injuries were layered with new ones, and there were many calluses. Which noble lady in the world would have such delicate hands? Liu Qingyuan's face instantly turned paler than a corpse. You mean, she isn't? Impossible. Absolutely impossible. He glared at me fiercely. Shintiani, this must be another one of your schemes. Is that so? Shui Lang reached out and patted Ning 1111 on the waist, unsealing her acupoint. Since that's the case, let her speak for herself. Yingjie, upon hearing this name, her eyes suddenly wandered 1,000 miles to the capital seeking revenge. It was also I who insisted on going to the Marquis of Qi's residence. If not for this, he would still be that mysterious and lofty crown prince. How could I have encountered such danger otherwise? When I was buried in the coffin, I vowed never to do good deeds again in this life. But I cannot let others suffer a tragic death because of me. Moreover, my life was saved by him in the first place. Returning it today is not out of the question. Having made up my mind, I said to him, haven't you always wanted to learn the art of tomb raiding? Today, I'll show you a thing or two. Before he could react, I executed a swallow skimming the water move and darted out. With a sharp gold dividing ruler in hand, I charged towards the Marquis of Qi. The old villain, seeing the stone tablet about to collapse and the two of us with nowhere left to hide, was gloating. Little did he expect that I would move like a ghost, appearing before him in an instant. I pressed the gold dividing ruler against his neck. Don't move, it's coated with corpse poison. A single scratch means certain death, with no cure. If you don't want to die, let him go. The old villain's face turned ashen. Whether from fear or anger was unclear. After a moment of hesitation, he finally nodded to the archers. The rain of arrows ceased immediately. I winked at Shui Lang, signaling him to run. Yet I saw his face turn deathly pale, as motionless as a statue. With you like this, how can I ever repay you in this lifetime? I shouted, it's just a small matter. Just remember to offer me a sacrifice during Qingming and Hansha festivals. Oh, by the way, I love pig intestines. Who would have thought that in a moment of distraction, the old villain, who had been firmly restrained by me, suddenly let out a series of cracking sounds all over his body. Then, as if using the art of bone shrinking, he slipped out from the crook of my arm. With a roll, he leaped back into the protective circle of the black-clad men. Then he shouted, kill them. In an instant, 1,000 arrows were unleashed. I had no time to dodge, so I simply closed my eyes, but the expected pain never came. Turning around, I saw Shui Lang blocking my path, his body pierced by several arrows. In the distance, the sound of galloping horses shook the ground as they approached. In no time, they had already charged right before our eyes. The Marquis of Qi's face turned pale with shock. Shui Tsongxing, I never expected you to be prepared all along. He raised his sword and swung it at him. He wanted to fight to the death. Shui Lang, however, paid no heed and simply looked at me, saying, Tsongxing Qi Lang, The name Alang is only what my mother would call me. I didn't mean to deceive you. Between life and death, a powerful crossbow bolt pierced through the clouds, pinning the Marquis of Qi to the ground. The remaining black-clad figures were all annihilated. As the dust settled, I scrambled and crawled to Xuelang's side. You're insane. He tried to smile but coughed up a mouthful of blood. Learned it from you. My throat felt as if it were being churned by a blunt knife, and I choked out. I'm not crazy. I already owed you a debt for saving my life. Even if I die, it would only be a way to repay you. But why go to such lengths? Deep down, I had an inkling of the answer, ready to surface. I like it, but I don't believe it. In my destitution and lowliness, what could I possibly possess that would make the lofty crown prince of the Eastern Palace take a liking to me? My appearance, my talent, my family background. No, I have nothing. Xuelang couldn't answer either. He simply took something out from his chest. It was a yellowed, shattered mask, very ugly, with clumsy brushwork, a pitiful sight, neither human nor ghost. In an instant, I felt as if struck by lightning. 10 years ago, I was 12 years old and had just joined the gold-touching sect. The first training after entering the door is courage. When it comes to eerie and terrifying places, the imperial mausoleums of this dynasty are second to none. My master is lazy. He dodged the guards, threw me into the underground palace, and then slipped out to drink. Inside, I encountered a child who was nearly starving to death. It should be a sacrificial boy. I just don't know how he managed to survive until now. The dry rations I brought were completely eaten by him. Anything else? His tone was cold. This kid. But when I thought about the boys and girls who died as sacrifices, most of them had miserable lives. My heart softened. Yes, there will be every day from now on. From that day on, I came to bring him food every day, until half a year later, when the sect moved south. The last time I came to see him, I brought enough food for half a month. And a blank mask bought at a temple fair. I drew a big silly face on it. Wear it when you're scared. Even ghosts would steer clear of you. Silence. I asked again. Are you really not coming with me? Still silence. I stood up, wiping away my tears. All right, take care of yourself. Just as he was about to leave, he suddenly spoke up. What's your name? I thought for a moment. Shintiani. And you? He didn't answer. 3 months later, I made a special trip back to find him. Yet at the entrance to the underground palace, a ceiling stone stood like an impassable chasm. The master said, once the ceiling stone is set, it means this tomb can no longer be opened by human effort. I peeled the candies I had saved up to buy and scattered them one by one on the ground. I think he should already be dead. I have always thought this way. Even when burning paper money during festivals, I never forget to include a share for him. After all, he was my first friend in this life. Yet, I never would have imagined that he was not a sacrificial boy at all, but a prince. Xuelang also fell into reminiscence. At that time, my mother passed away suddenly, and my father was away on a campaign. The entire palace was under the control of the Empress Dowager. She never liked my mother and, by extension, didn't like me either. One day in the imperial garden, she ordered the imperial consort to push me into the water. The consort lost her balance and ended up falling in herself, losing her child. A group of people made a big fuss about this, forcing me to confess. It wasn't me who did it, so why should I confess? The Empress Dowager was furious and ordered me to guard the imperial mausoleum, with no one allowed to attend to me. Not even food or water was provided. She wants to watch me perish on my own. I was utterly shocked. That old witch, the Empress Dowager. Why does she hate you so much? After all, you are flesh and blood, he sneered. What flesh and blood? The reason is simple. My mother is not the noblewoman they meticulously selected from among the great families. Instead, she comes from humble origins. They are the so-called lowly commoners, so her bloodline is also lowly. At that time, all the officials in the court were well aware of the injustice I suffered and the punishment I endured, but not a single person offered advice, not a single person pleaded for mercy, not even one sent word to my father. The emperor, in the underground palace, I gnawed through all the candles, finished the rotten offerings, and then starved for 5 days and 5 nights. By the end of the hunger, I even started hallucinating. I ate them all, the Empress Dowager, the Imperial Concubine, the unborn baby, the bowing eunuchs. I threw them all into my mouth and chewed them to a pulp. But when I opened my eyes, I was still so hungry. I even thought, why haven't I died yet? If I were dead, I wouldn't be hungry anymore. He closed his eyes in agony. Even after 10 years, the despair from back then remains vivid in his memory, like a festering sore. It torments him every moment, until I met you. The blood on the ground kept spreading. Xuelang was completely drenched in red. Only a face remains, extreme white and intense red, breathtakingly beautiful. Tears streamed down my face as I finally asked that question. Why aren't you dead yet? He was stunned. After a moment, he sprang up like a carp, stood up, and stretched his limbs. You saw through it. Looking around, the men in black and the Imperial Guards had long since vanished. The horizon began to glow with the first light of dawn. I stretched lazily. With such heavy bleeding, you still managed to chat with me for half an hour. If I couldn't figure it out by now, I'd really be a fool. Besides, I had already sewn a golden silk soft armor into your clothes. An arrow of this level could never pierce through it. He looked at me, his eyes shimmering with emotion. You're right. It suddenly dawned on me, ever since we met. The way he looked at me had never changed, so sincere, so precious, so gentle. It seems capable of melting the hardest things in the world. And indeed, I was melted. I waved to him. Let's go. I still owe you a bowl of spicy soup. After hearing the story above, what are your thoughts? Feel free to share your opinions in the comments section. Looking forward to hearing from you. If you liked this story, don't forget to like it, share it, and subscribe to my channel. See you next time.